The insult wasn't shouted. It was murmured right into my ear, while the rest of the family sang happy birthday to my granddaughter, and the candles made her face glow like I imagined mine must have when I turned 7. My daughter, Paula, leaned close, breath sweet with the frosting she never lets herself eat in public, and said, "Mom, from now on I'll keep your house keys and your checkbook so you don't, lose them again." Everyone's worried. She lifted my keyring from my sweater pocket with the same easy intimacy she used when she used to take hairpins from my vanity, and then turned to kiss my cheek for the photos. It looked tender in the phone screens. It felt like theft. I smiled for the camera. I even pretended to blow out a candle someone placed in front of me as a joke. Inside, I was trying to find a steady place. I'm 71, not 7100. I misplace my glasses. I do not misplace houses. But, worried, had a way of sticking like a burr once Paula said it out loud in a room full of people who wanted neat stories. In our town, neat stories travel faster than truth. For 38 years, I was the municipal budget analyst for Glenmoor, a place where the potholes and the preschool playset both required a vote and a spreadsheet. I never brought home praise. I brought home balance books and the habit of noticing small numbers that don't line up. My husband Peter used to say I counted breaths for the fun of it. He's been gone 11 years now, and yes, I do count. It calms me. It tells me what's real. So when the presents were opened and the kids ran shrieking down the hallway, I drifted to the kitchen sink, safer ground than the sofa where the glossiest mothers compared workouts, and watched Paula slide my keyring into her bag as naturally as slipping a pen behind an ear. My son-in-law, Jared, caught me looking and offered a smile that had never once reached his eyes. "You know we're here to help, Ellie. Maybe take a break from decisions for a while." The room smelled like cinnamon and hairspray. I rubbed a spot on the counter until the laminate dulled. "Help." "Of course." Back home, I opened the drawer where I keep my carbon copies. The check I'd written last week to the Glenmoor Education Trust for the Robotics Club, one of the few things I still insisted on doing myself, had a tear in the corner I didn't remember. And on the counter where the mail sits, a plain envelope had been slit so perfectly the flap still lay flat. It held a bank brochure I'd already seen. Only now, a sticky note was attached. "Mom, met with manager. Great solution. P." I didn't like that exclamation point. It sounded like applause after a magic trick. The next day, I took the long way to the pharmacy for my arthritis prescription because the long way passes City Hall. The front steps still remember my feet. On the pharmacy counter, the young tech, Noor, handed me the paper bag and then didn't let go. Her eyes flicked to the side, toward the consultation booth. "Mrs. Markham? Could I show you something about your refills?" Her voice did a little dance on the word refills. Inside the booth, with the fan humming like a secret, she set a clipboard down. "We keep signature logs when someone else picks up a controlled medication on a patient's behalf," she said. "It's standard. Your daughter came last week." She signed. She tapped the page. It was Paula's grand sweeping P, the same one that used to float above her high school essays, the same one on my birthday cards. Above it, Noor's careful print, patient unable to drive safely per caregiver. Noor swallowed. "You drove here just fine, Mrs. Markham." I did not cry. My hands went very still on the edge of the little table. "Thank you," I said, and Noor nodded as if we had finished a routine choreography and could now bow. Then she slid a second paper across, as if by accident. A photocopy of a faxed letter on my doctor's letterhead, the words "mild cognitive impairment" underlined in blue ink that was not my doctor's steady, old-fashioned blue. Noor met my eyes. "I thought you'd want to see. You didn't get your copy in the portal." I didn't know then that this 22-year-old, with a hijab the mossy green of our river in April, would become my first ally. I only knew my signature log had become the first page in a new book. And that night, when I tried to sleep, the exclamation point on that sticky note blinked like a police light. What exactly had Paula solved? 2 days later, a courier rang my bell with a padded envelope addressed not to me but to the Glenmoor Community Land Trust, care of Elena Markham, interim treasurer, a title I'd held since Peter died because no one else wanted to wrestle with the bylaws. "We called your daughter for delivery permission," the courier said, cheerful. "She said it was fine." Inside the envelope was a checkbook, navy leather, with a sticky note on the first page in that same bright ink. Mom, so much easier if I manage the little stuff. So proud of you for letting go. P. Little stuff. 12 duplexes our trust bought from a predatory landlord and turned into long-term affordable homes were not little. The memo line on the first check was already filled in. Consulting retainer, J. Stone Advocacy Group. $10,000. Jared Stone. My son-in-law. My vision went light around the edges. I dialed Paula. I didn't practice a sentence. She picked up with a voice that belonged to public Paula, sunny and quick. Mom, did you get the checkbook? Isn't that easier? You don't have to stress about the rent cycle anymore. Why is Jared's firm on a trust retainer? I asked, my voice steady like a scale that refuses to wobble. Silence. A tiny, offended exhale. He's helping us, she said. Pro bono, well, almost. He's going to handle the code compliance filings and tenant mediation. You'll thank me when you have less on your plate. I didn't hire him. Well, she said, voice tightening, that's why we're transitioning things. People worry when they see you clutching paper ledgers in a digital era. We can do this kindly, or we can do it the legal way. Your choice. Something inside clicked into place then, like a file drawer aligning. If they wanted the legal way, they would have it. I could look frail and be made of iron. It would take planning. It would take quiet. But I've been underestimated by bigger fish than my daughter. That evening, as the porch light drew moths and the river threw up its chorus of frogs, I opened Peter's old fireproof box and took out the trust bylaws, my notary stamp, and tucked inside a manila envelope with his handwriting on the tab. For if I'm gone before you, a durable power of attorney naming me as the sole signatory for the trust until the board voted otherwise in a public session. Peter never left a sticky note. He left structures. I rubbed the corner of the paper where his thumb must have pressed when he slid it into the envelope. Then I called the number on the back of Noor's badge, the county's elder services legal line, because I knew a trap when I saw one, and I planned to step into it so neatly they'd think it was theirs. Noor texted me an image at midnight, a screenshot of an email from my doctor's office, timestamped 11:41 p.m. Subject line, draft letter for review. The sender wasn't my doctor. It was Jared's paralegal. My last thought before sleep was that someone had left a door open. I intended to walk through it. The first humiliation came in public, because that's how you teach an old dog to heel loudly, with witnesses. I showed up at the Glenmoor Trust's monthly tenant breakfast with my cinnamon bread, like always, and found a sign taped to the coffee urn as of today, all maintenance requests must be submitted to Stone Advocacy Group via portal. People I've known for years, people who call me Ms. Elena and ask about my rhubarb, hovered by the pamphlet tables, reading under the eyes of Jared's assistant in a blazer too tight for bending down to listen. New efficiencies, she chirped when I asked. We're modernizing the trust. Modernizing. I looked at the tenants, single moms who had been pushed out of 3 cities before we stabilized rents, a veteran who still walked perimeter around the picnic tables out of habit, and felt something hot and clean rise in me. Maintenance requests are not legal disputes, I said. They're leaky faucets. Put the paper forms back. She smiled over my head for someone's video. The forms did not reappear. At home, a letter from First County Bank waited in my mailbox. We're pleased to confirm the addition of authorized user Paula Stone to account ending 1045. The letter was dated the day after my birthday. I stood at the counter, counted to 28 to slow my breathing, and then called the number. Mrs. Markham, the manager said, smooth as a clean floor, your daughter brought in a letter from your physician and a notarized statement authorizing temporary oversight due to stress. I'm so sorry if you were not properly notified. A notarized statement, I said. From me. Yes, ma'am. We keep copies for 60 days. Would you like me to email it? Yes, I said, and gave him the address no one in my family knows, the one my former interns set up for me when I started tutoring them about the FAFSA. The scan arrived seconds later. There was my signature, tilted slightly right as always. There was my notary seal. There was also, in the middle of the page, a number that didn't belong, my old landline, disconnected since 2019. I touched the screen with my index finger. If you forge alone, you miss the small things. Jared had used a template. He had not done his homework. A gift appeared on my porch that weekend, a gleaming mobility scooter with a bow tied on the handlebar like a joke. Paula's voice message cooed, "Mom, we're thinking of safety. Use the scooter for errands, okay? Keys on the hook." The envelope taped to the manual held a Department of Motor Vehicles transfer paper for my car, already filled out, just missing my signature. The memo line read, "Temporary custodianship to reduce liability exposure," as if my Corolla were a loaded gun. I put the papers in the bread box behind the flour. Then I went out to the garage, patted the hood of my car, and told it we might take a drive soon. On Monday, I sat across from a legal aid attorney named Rohan Patel, who had a suit that actually fit and eyes that smiled without pity. I handed him a zip folder the color of the Glenmoor River, Norse logs, the bank letter, the scooter papers, and a photocopy of my husband's old power of attorney for the trust. "I know they're trying to set guardianship in motion," I said. "I'll lose the trust and my autonomy in one go if I fight from pride. So I'm not going to fight from pride. I'm going to fight from paperwork." Rohan nodded slowly. "We'll request a capacity evaluation from a neutral physician," he said, "and file an emergency petition to restrain changes to the trust pending review. I'll also subpoena pharmacy communications and your bank's video for the day the notarized statement was submitted." He tapped the forged letter. "Who notarized this?" I looked at the stamp and felt my lips press into a line. "Sheila McLean," I said. "Our church deacon. She bakes lemon bars for funerals and collects coats in winter." "Fake benefactors," Rohan said softly, "are often the most efficient predators. We'll handle it." The second humiliation arrived via Facebook because that's where our town worships on weekdays. Paula posted a photo of us at my birthday party, my head tilted, hers bent toward me, the kind of lighting that makes everything look tender. "Please send love to Mom as we help her ease into a less stressful season," she wrote. "She'll be stepping back from responsibilities with the land trust for her health." Heart emojis sprouted like mold. "Such a good daughter. So hard, but so necessary." She'd tagged the Glenmoor Chronicle. I closed my laptop and sat very still. I could feel my pulse in my gums. Noor texted me, "I'm sorry. Do you need a ride?" I texted back, "Not yet. But thank you." The rule of our world snapped into focus that week. When someone says guardianship protects, ask who holds the keys. Rohan explained it in quiet words. If Paula succeeded in establishing even limited guardianship, she could move me, sell my house, and take control of my vote on the trust board in one legal breath, dressing every decision in the respectable clothes of best interest. It's a powerful tool for people who love. In the wrong hands, it's surgery with a kitchen knife. On Thursday, a courier tried to deliver a thick envelope labeled Stone Advocacy Retainer Agreement, Glenmoor Trust. "Needs the treasurer's signature," he chirped. "Your daughter said you'd be home." I signed his little handheld pad with a line that looked nothing like my name. When he left, I opened the envelope with my butter knife and photographed the contents. Clause 12 caught my eye, 10% of recovered rent arrears to be paid to firm as contingency. We didn't have rent arrears when I was treasurer. We had payment plans and groceries dropped on stoops. Jared had found a way to monetize hardship. That night I took the scooter, yes, the scooter, around the block because I wanted a laugh before the storm. Mrs. Ortiz across the street clapped her hands. Elena, look at you," she said. I wiggled the handlebar and then parked it by her hydrangeas. "It came with paperwork," I told her. "Gifts with paperwork always have traps." She crossed herself. People forget God sees paperwork too. I didn't forget. At dawn on Friday, my mailbox held a registered letter from First County Bank, notice of outgoing wire transfer in the amount of $48,500 from account Glenmoor Trust operating to Stone Advocacy Group. The wire was scheduled for Monday 9 a.m. There's a time in every fight when the future arrives with a timetable. Mine came in a windowed envelope. At noon, Noor slipped into the booth with a folded receipt. "Your daughter tried to refill a prescription early using your portal," she said. "When I asked for you, she said you were sleeping. I can't stop her without losing my job unless I have something official." She looked miserable. I reached out and patted her hand. "You've given me more than enough," I said. Now, let me give you something. I gave Nora a name from a decade ago, the quietest man I've ever known, with wrists like a bird's and a moral compass you could set a watch by. Ask if he remembers me, I said. Ask if he's still the bank's night security supervisor. Ask if the camera in the notary's alcove works on a loop. The night I decided to stop reacting and start building, thunder sat out over the cornfields and kept its distance like a dog with bad intentions. I made tea. I laid out the puzzle pieces, Peter's old document, the bylaw clause requiring a public vote to change signatories, the scheduled wire, the paralegal's email, Sheila's notary stamp with a date that coincided with the day she told me she'd been home with a cold. Then I opened a new spiral notebook and wrote at the top, if they insist I'm a burden, I'll be one. Strategically. That is the reversed weakness you asked for, if you were asking. I agreed to Paula's plan to stay a week in her guest room so you can be close while we sort things. I packed slowly, the way women my age are expected to pack, with tissue and size. I left behind nothing important and brought everything vital inside the pink floral suitcase she hates. I turned on my porch camera's cloud backup, a feature my nephew set up when doorbell theft started. Then I let Paula load my suitcase into Jared's car like a trophy. This will be so good for you, she said, squeezing my shoulder. Structure. Her grip left half-moons. Paula's house smells like eucalyptus and rules. Shoes off at the door. Coasters under water glasses. No TV unless it's educational for the kids. Their guest room had an extra lock on the outside, so the kids don't sneak in, she said, laughing. Jared set up an iPad on the dresser. Just tap here for your shows, Ellie, he said. Cheer quiet. He tapped a home screen labeled Mom's Life with an app that wanted my bank password to streamline bills. I smiled like an old dog offered a trick too big for her. Oh, I don't know about passwords, I said. Why don't you help me tomorrow, sweetheart? He patted my shoulder and left with my teacup to wash it properly. At 3 a.m, I got out of bed, silent as the numbers I've kept company with all my life, and tapped the iPad awake. I didn't open their app. I opened the camera. I recorded my hands, old and steady, writing a note. I, Elena Markham, am of sound mind and doing this of my own free will, and then I read it out loud like the most boring bedtime story. Then I opened the bank site with the alternate login I created after the call with Mr. Smooth, and I changed nothing. I just downloaded statements the way raccoons wash food they never eat, because the washing is part of the joy. A small victory came at dawn when Noor texted, "He remembers you from the grant you did for his daughter's college." He pulled the footage. He wants to meet elsewhere. Elsewhere turned out to be the breakfast counter at Donnie's Diner, where the smell of bacon has cured more moral crises in our town than Sunday sermons. The security supervisor, Mr. Bell, took off his cap, rubbed a thumb along a grease groove, and slid a still image across to me on his phone. You didn't sign that, Miss Markham. The image showed Paula standing at Sheila's notary alcove with a stack of papers, Jared just behind her, and a man tall, trim, expensively bored, pointing to the stamp like he owned it. That's notary fraud, Mr. Bell said, softly, as if it were a confession. We keep audio too, he added, because people like to argue. He risked his job by showing me. That is what allyship looks like when it doesn't have time to put on a costume. I took what he gave and threaded it onto the string that was becoming a net. Rohan filed for an emergency injunction Friday afternoon. He called at 6, a judge signed it. Temporary stop on any transfers from the trust outside ordinary expenses, effective immediately. I thanked him, sat on the edge of the guest bed staring at the eucalyptus print above the dresser, and then heard the front door open. Voices. Paula's high and tight, Jared's lower with heat in it. Who tipped her off, he said. You promised me this would be clean. The new blow came that night. My phone, the old one with the bird ring on, went dark, then chirped alive with a clean screen welcome. Jared stood in my doorway with a bright, slim rectangle in his palm. New phone, Ellie, he said. Easier for everyone. I transferred your contacts. He did not hand over the passcode. We'll put your banking on face recognition tomorrow, he added, which tells you everything about what tomorrow was supposed to be. A minute later, a shadow crossed the hallway light. My grandson, Theo, 11 and getting longer by the day, leaned on the door jamb. He looked at the phone in Jared's hand, then at me. His mouth made a small decision. "Grandma," he said, not loudly, but with the gravity only children and judges can conjure, "do you want me to show you how to turn on the iPad camera without the passcode?" I looked at him and felt something aching and bright. "Yes," I said. "Please." Theo showed me a swipe he wasn't supposed to know yet. He showed me how to point the camera at fingers sneaking into drawers at midnight. He showed me where to save recordings so they look like empty air. And then he went back to his room and closed the door against the men in his house who think children can't read air. On Sunday night, a message slid under my door in the careful, italic hand of a woman who still believes in paper. "Elena, call me when you can. Don't use your phone. Sheila." My heart beat once hard and then steadied. The fake benefactor had begun to worry. The stage was set. In small towns, moral theater happens at weddings and board meetings. We didn't have a wedding. We had the Glenmoor Community Land Trust annual meeting in the old school gym, with the varnished floor still bearing faint ghost lines from the days before they painted over our girls' court to save money. Rows of folding chairs, coffee in big silver urns, and a podium on the stage no taller than my ribcage. Jared's assistant stood at the entrance with a sign-in sheet, chin high like a bouncer. She didn't get my mug of coffee dumped on her shoes because God loves even the misguided. Paula opened the meeting like she'd emceed her high school talent show, voice bright, eyes scanning for cameras. "As many of you know," she trilled, "my mother has been struggling, so my husband's firm has kindly stepped in to shepherd the trust through compliance issues." Rohan sat a little behind me in a navy suit and a tie that looked like it had been tied by someone who loved him early, with care. When Paula motioned toward the agenda item labeled Ratification of Contract with Stone Advocacy Group, I rose. My knees ached, because life is real and cartilage doesn't grow back for speeches, but my voice did not shake. "Before you vote," I said, into a microphone that had introduced decades of school plays, "you should know what you're voting for." "Mom," Paula said, tight smile, hand extended, "we discussed that you'd say a few words of thanks and then." "No," I said. "Now we discuss this." I put the first exhibit on the document camera Rohan had asked the custodial staff to set up, a photocopy of the notary page on the letter that added Paula to my account. The room went quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when the fight isn't about gossip anymore, but about rules that can be read. "This stamp," I said, tapping the notary circle, "is dated a day our deacon told us she was home with the flu. Here is the bank's camera still showing the same document being stamped by someone else." Rohan clicked his remote and Mr. Bell's still filled the screen. Jared's smile went thin enough to cut paper. A low sound moved through the room. I put down the second exhibit, Noor's log showing patient unable to drive safely per caregiver, and then Noel, the manager of the duplex on Maple, stood up without being asked. "Elena drove my boy to urgent care last Tuesday," he called from the back. She reversed into the tight spot like a trucker. Laughter skittered around the edges of the room. Relief is a cheap date. Then it sobered. I put down the retainer agreement with Clause 12, circled, and explained in plain town words what contingency fees mean when the contingency is poverty. I showed the scheduled wire, the injunction stamped by a judge at 5:42 p.m. last Friday. I showed the bylaws Peter helped write, the clause that says the treasurer cannot be replaced except by a public vote noticed in advance, not by a post on Facebook designed to shame. Paula stepped up then, mouth open, but Rohan raised a hand. "Just a moment," he said. "We have one more witness." He looked toward the side door. It opened. Mr. Bell walked in with his cap in his hands and courage in his pocket. Behind him, a woman with careful hair and a lemon bar personality stood wringing the strap of her purse. "Sheila. The deacon." She looked everywhere but at me. She began, voice like a hymnal page. "I stamped a copy my nephew brought me at home because he said Elena had already signed at the bank and they just needed the stamp. I know now that was wrong. He works for Mr. Stone." She finally looked at me then, and it wasn't apology so much as recognition, the way two women pass a truth between them without letting the men see. The room made that sound people make when the script changes in the middle of the play. Jared took a step forward, palms out in a politician's shrug. "There's been a misunderstanding," he said. We were only trying to help an elderly family member simplify things. We have emails documenting her confusion and her agreement to step back. On the screen, Theo appeared. Rohan had asked if he was willing. I hadn't. I would have protected him from this forever if I could. He stood at the side of the room in his school hoodie, hands in his pockets like a boy trying not to take up too much space. Grandma asked me to show her how to save videos, he said, voice soft but clear, so she could remember recipes. But they also show my dad and mom going through her stuff at night. He shrugged, a child's apology for telling the truth. I think that matters. Rohan played a clip, Jared sliding open my desk drawer in the guest room at 12:17 a.m. Paula's whisper, check the envelope behind the bird book, the rustle, the half-laugh when they found the trust ledger. There was nothing dramatic, the way real theft rarely is. Just efficient hands gathering what isn't theirs. Silence poured through the gym, heavy and honest. Then the tenant families began to move, chairs scraping, bodies turning toward the stage. The veteran walked forward, hat in his hands. We ain't a revenue stream, he said to Jared, courteous, because war taught him you only raise your voice when shots are already fired. You don't get to come in here and skim off our rent because you married in. Rohan turned to the board. We asked the board to vote on 3 motions, he said. 1. To nullify any contract with Stone Advocacy Group. 2. To reaffirm Ms. Markham as treasurer until a standard election. 3. To refer the notary incident and fraudulent guardianship attempt to the county prosecutor. His voice did not rise. He didn't need it to. Hands went up. Some hesitated. Then more rose, palms the color of work. The board chair asked who opposed. Only one member, Paula, kept her hand down, arms folded, mouth tight. Jared stared at the floor and saw for the first time what lives under varnished wood scuffs and grit and the ground people stand on. As the room exhaled, I felt a pressure leave the back of my eyes. It wasn't triumph. It was the ordinary relief of a structure holding when you need it to. Then I felt a small warm hand slip into mine. My granddaughter, Nora, 7 and solemn. She leaned her head against my arm. Grandma, she whispered, can we still make the cinnamon bread on Saturday? I swallowed the ache that rose. We can, I said. We will. 2 sheriff's deputies came quietly to the side door to ask Sheila a few questions. She nodded, lips white, then touched my elbow as she passed. I forgot what I was for a minute, she murmured. Thank you for reminding me. The prosecutor called it potential exploitation of a vulnerable adult and a fraudulent instrument. The county called it a scandal because counties love neat names. I called it Tuesday, and then I called it Wednesday, and then I called it my life moving forward. There were consequences. Jared's firm paid back the retainer they had taken from 2 other small nonprofits in neighboring towns when board chairs started calling each other after our meeting. Sheila resigned from her deaconship, then came back in a different way, quietly, anonymously, donating every month to the emergency fund we use when someone's fridge dies and their paycheck hasn't cleared. Paula did not go to jail. That is not what I wanted. She did, however, sign a stipulation that she would not act for me in any financial capacity, would not speak to any of my doctors without my written consent, and would not enter my home without notice. These are not handcuffs. They are boundaries. They fit better. I didn't cut her out of my life. I learned to weigh my words like coins and spend them only where they buy something other than regret. When she texts, "How are you?" I answer with weather and pictures of the river. When she says, "We worry," I say, "We don't all worry about the same things." She knows I amended my will. I set up a trust that bypasses both children for cash and pays direct stipends to my grandchildren tied to volunteer hours at the land trust or the library. If they sweep the community room floor on a Saturday morning, the trust will add $20 to their college fund. If they don't, it won't. Money teaches, if you let it. Nor got a full-time job offer from the hospital pharmacy. She still texts me photos of her basil plant and once a month shares a recipe we try together, each in our own kitchen, laughing over FaceTime when we burn the onions at the same moment. Mr. Bell kept his job because he hadn't actually broken a rule. He'd shown images to a board-appointed counsel on written request, a request Rohan signed with the steadiness of someone who knows paperwork isn't a weapon, it's a spine. As for me, I went back to the tenant breakfast with my cinnamon bread and a stack of paper maintenance forms that we keep next to the new online portal, because modernizing doesn't mean erasing the hands that hold pens. On Tuesday nights, I run a little class at the library called Numbers for the Rest of Us. We do budgets and read letters from banks and talk about notice and consent and how to say no without apologizing for being alive. Sometimes I make coffee. Sometimes one of the tenants brings empanadas. Always, someone says something that makes the whole room sit up a little straighter. My moral? I don't have one to hand out like a mint at the end of church. I have a fact. When people tell you you're a burden, ask them to put it in writing. If they refuse, invite them to the next board meeting. Tell them to bring a pen. I still count things. Today, I counted the 7 steps from my front door to the peonies Peter planted that second spring when we were still deciding whether we fit. I counted 3 neighborhood kids on scooters streaking past my gate yelling, "Ms. Elena, look." I counted how long it took for the frog chorus to start after sunset, 12 minutes and a half, and how long I stood on the porch to listen, 12 minutes and a half more. I counted the breaths between my granddaughter's question and my answer when she asked if bad people go away forever. No, I said, smoothing the flour off her cheeks, they go where consequences live. And we go forward. If you walk by on a Saturday morning and smell cinnamon, don't be shy. The coffee is strong. The ledgers are open. The doors are too. And if you look very closely, on the bulletin board by the front door, there's a small photo pinned under the magnet shaped like a bluebird, a still image of a gym full of folding chairs, an old woman at a podium, and a room of people who decided to count together. That image will hang there until it fades. Then I'll pin up another. Not as proof for anyone who doubted, but as a reminder, to myself as much as to my town, that justice, like bread, is better when it's shared hot, in slices you can hold, with the crumbs falling where they may.